about three or so years of my schooling at Mackenzie High School, I was, given the privilege to be under the tutelage of our great and late principal, Mr. Clifton McDonald Sr. So when I was called upon by some of our other old students to be a part of organizing this day of reflection, I did so without hesitation. And I further consulted with Andrew James, who also, without hesitation, offered his service. So, what we're going to allow those of you in the room to do is to use this opportunity to share whatever memories you have of your time in the school, how you think Mr. Clifton McDonald tutelage, while he was at the helm of that great institution, how did it affect you? And I'm quite sure there are other persons who might be in that were not a part of Mackenzie High School, but they were also benefited from his great leadership at some of the other educational institutions that he headed and led with great success.
About 25 years ago, I first met Mr. McDonald. We were at Brooklyn College together, and in the introduction, I learned that he was from Guyana, that he was a former principal in Guyana. Like I said again, we did some classes together at Brooklyn College when we were all doing a master's degree. And, I'm from Barbados, and there were times, where it was stressful and so on in class. But his voice was always kind of reassuring, a reassuring voice and so on. So I guess I would say that from that reassurance, he kind of motivated us to continue with the classes and so on. And we all graduated together. I had a fortune of working with him as a school teacher at MS 394 in Brooklyn. And later on, when we transferred, he became a mentor of teachers at the other school where I also was working. And so it was a privilege to be with him. I consider him as a great friend. I offer him my condolences to his family. And I know that one of these days, we will all get a chance to meet him together when the master comes. Thank you.
I'm really honored tonight to be here. Mr. McDonald was, as I'm pretty sure for every one of us, a pillar of really great ethics and a strong disciplinarian. And my days in high school, I always remember him wearing that handkerchief around his neck, I guess around the collar. And we all, everybody, I believe after a while decided to, I guess, copy that same, handkerchief around. But that being said, I just wanted to point out something that was a big part of my life growing up. I was very poor at math, and but at the same time, I really wanted to be in the business stream, and it was simply because my older brother was in the business stream. There was no other reason, and so I had this great intention. I wanted to be in the business stream, but again, like I said, math was not my thing. So I remember Mr. McDonald saying to me, you really shouldn't be going in the business stream because it's accounting, and that is a lot of accounting, and so. But he said, I will give you a chance because you're, because of what you do on the other side. So I'll give you a chance. I have never forgotten that. And fast forward many, many, many years later, my whole life has been surrounded around financial services. And I think it's in large part to him. And a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, when Clifton brought him over to our house here in Canada, I was really quite honored to have him here. And I told him that, and I mentioned that story. Of course, it was just one of many stories in his life as a head teacher. So it really was just something that was more memorable for myself. And so tonight or today to the McDonald's, everyone, Clifton, etc. I do want to say we've lost a great man, but I do appreciate that he had a really excellent run. I'd like to be like him. I'd like to finish like him. He went a good long run and he finished very strong. And tonight, as much as we're giving you our condolences, we also appreciate the value that Mr. McDonald brought to so many of our lives.
I want to remember Mr. McDonald for his firm hand on discipline and how he did it. There is an incident that stands out in my mind. It's now roughly 40 years gone, but it still resonates with me. I know those of us who went to Mackenzie High School would remember those Monday morning assemblies. And we had some resident comedians on in the school, names like Regan and Ray and Ian Mason, those guys. And so whenever they would be holding assembly, everybody would be excited, because they knew they were in for a treat. It would be fun. And I remember this particular day, they were actually lampooning teachers. That was part of the assembly. And a few things that I remember from that, they started off by mentioning new and current movies, and they would attribute attach those movies, as a matter of fact, connect those movies with teachers at the school. So like Miss Elma Langevin would star in The French Connection, and you had, I think Mr. Limerick fell in a race, a teacher's race the year before. So Carl Limerick starring in The Runner Stumbles and this kind of stuff, making fun about it. Where it took a turn was when they started giving out awards. And I remember them giving out an award from the Demerara Tobacco Company, because there was a teacher, I'm not going to mention his name, who was a heavy smoker. And it was at that point that Mr. McDonald stood up and stepped in and stopped the assembly. And I remember him saying specifically, some of you students are behaving very badly. Those were his exact words. And nobody was, in spite of the fact that we all were disappointed, nobody was upset because of the way in which he did it. He was not the aggressive type, but he had a handle on things, very controlled. Mr. McDonald was more revered than feared. And so I want to remember him for being that composed but firm disciplinarian, one who had a handle on things. And it wasn't just about what he did, but how he did it. We surely will miss him. The last time I saw him was when we had that reunion years ago in Brooklyn, and that's a long time. But I want to extend condolences to the rest of the McDonald family. Thank you for sharing him with us, to the point where now, as I said, I can look back 40 years later and still recall the kind of man he was and how he handled himself and how he led Mackenzie High School.
For this opportunity to pay tribute to my former and late headmaster, Mr. Clifton McDonald. I had the privilege of being under his tutelage for only 2 years, but I must say they were two uh, impacting years. As head prefect, I had the opportunity of interacting with him and his staff from that perspective. And I found him to be a very down-to-earth headmaster. He wasn't an headmaster who was merely office bound. He found ways and means to communicate with the students. And I do recall, though I didn't benefit from it, that every year they used to have a activity, a camp with the prefects. which provided for even greater communication with the students. In fact, Mr. McDonald um, very suavely used that opportunity to get to know and to understand his students. I didn't have that luck because the last year, I think it was in 1970 or 71, we lost one of our students in Suriname by drowning, and therefore it was decided that the subsequent year, when I was head prefect, that there would be no such camp because of what had occurred the previous year. But certainly that occasion was a big occasion which was used by uh, Mr. McDonald, who himself attended some of those camps to interact with the students and to learn about and from them. He was a headmaster who was prepared, though he wasn't actually teaching a particular subject, to give guidance to students in terms of their career path and their subjects of strength and subjects of weakness. And I do recall him having the opportunity to indicate to me what he thought at one time was an area in which, a subject area in which I was weak. And I always, as I have developed thereafter, look back to that as an inspirational moment uh, in my life. Though it was constructive criticism which inspired my own growth and development in the particular subject area, which was it is a critical subject area for anyone. I would therefore like to take the opportunity on behalf of my class, the class of 1972, to express our condolences. Even as I do that, I should recall that much of what Christchurch became in terms of a physical structure also happened during his period. The school is now thrice the size it used to be when he assumed as headmaster, but he was able, along with the then Alan Guyana, the Archbishop of the West Indies, to organize the students and to organize support both local and overseas for us to extend that school to thrice its size through self-help. And that must be seen as a very, very great achievement and a contribution to the growth and development of Christchurch. So he has certainly left his mark not only in terms of the intellectual guidance he gave to students, but in terms of the physical development of the school to provide for many more persons to be able to attend and for many more subjects to be offered. Because once the school is extended, we're able to do more work. For example, the first bit of extension had to do with the establishment of the art room on the southern side of the old building downstairs so that we had better facilities as a consequence of that. And therefore, Mr. McDonald certainly made a significant contribution to Christchurch in particular, but to education at large in Guyana. And I take this opportunity on behalf of the class of 72 to extend my condolences to his family. He is someone whose life we should celebrate rather than someone whose death we should mourn. Thank you.
It's a pretty somber moment for all of us. Um, Mr. McDonald was a great man. He's a great man to me and countless others. I could remember having difficulty doing math with Danny Baker, who used to rough me up sometimes, and I could remember Mr. McDonald pulling me to the side and telling me, "Listen, every one of us are not going to be the best academic in the world, but I know you have some talents. Now, whatever that talent is, I want you to reach down inside of you and find it." And fast forward a couple of years ago, I was able to open a driving school in Brooklyn right around the corner from his house. And I ran into him outside doing gardening one day. I was teaching a student to drive. And he saw the name on the car parked in front of his house, and he looked and he saw me. And he was so proud. He said, I told you you have your own talent. So I'm very happy for you. I used to go by and check him. I have a picture that I took with him, I think it's like 5 years ago. When I last saw him, he was starting to go down in health. I always visited him, sometimes stop by and get a drink with him when he was mobile and active and all that good stuff. He's a great man. I personally is going to miss him a lot. I impacted me a lot, continued to give me advice over the years every time I would stop by and say hello. And I'd like to say condolences to his wife and all his kids, Clifton, Clifford, Donna, I think it's Carol, the other girl name. I don't really remember her name. I think it did. And condolences to all of us. We really gonna miss that man. That man's a great man. Did a lot of good things and gave us a lot of that advice. So at 99, I would love to make it there. And I think, as Misha Mosley said, he got there with grace. And I'd love to follow that too.
I think on behalf of all of my classmates, um, so my name is Robin Gittens, and we were the favorites of Mr. McDonald. Uh, when we entered high school, he immediately fell in love with our class, and he paid strict attention until we left. Most of us went through to sixth form, and he made certain that he paid attention to us because Clifton was in our class. So it was important for him to make certain that our class did exceptionally well, and we never let him down. And the one thing he always focused on was taking us from being diamonds in the rough and making us good citizens. And as I look back and I look forward, I think most of us achieved that goal. So Mr. McDonald was good at mentoring people, good at taking you one on one. And I heard someone talk about him saying you got some kind of talent, and he tried to make certain that you did the best you could. So it it's with a lot of sadness, um, that we're here to honor him. But I think he is smiling that he has mentored thousands of students, and for the most part, they all turned out to be good citizens who conduct themselves at the highest level.
I wasn't one of the lucky ones to be attending Mackenzie High School around the time when Mr. McDonald's. Okay, so I was a little bit too young, around Robin's age group when I attended Mackenzie High School. I went to Mackenzie High School during the time of Miss Gloria Britton. So I wasn't fortunate enough to meet Mr. McDonald, but I've heard a lot of good things and great things about him. And to me, any person who have taught at Mackenzie High School, is someone of great caliber, because we are all great products of Mackenzie High School. And so when I hear of Mr. McDonald and the things that he had done, I speak to Robin a lot from time to time, and he shared with me what a great person he was, and somebody who basically is like a foundation for Mackenzie High School, because we're all proud of Mackenzie High School. It's of great importance to all of us. So tonight, I just want to express my sympathy with him, what with the loss that we have experienced. And I just want to say my heart goes out to the family, but the things that he has educated previous Mackenzie High School alumni on, I know it has impacted their lives. And there's a lot of significant, things that have left in their hearts and minds about what he has done for the students of Mackenzie High School. So tonight, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. And I'm very proud that you guys are here and making this effort to share the great things about Mr. McDonald.
Well, it's good to be part of this group. I don't think I know anybody on the online here, but I represent the Christchurch Secondary School end of Mr. McDonald's journey. He was the headmaster back in when Christchurch and all the other schools in Guyana came together to form the secondary school. No, he was the headmaster from 68, I think, to 72. So that was during my time. I remember a lot about Mr. McDonald. He was strict, I must say. He was not afraid to pull you up with the wild cane if he had to. He was really an inspiration to us in bringing the school, the students together as one, because Christchurch Secondary School back in those days was one for all and all for one. You wanted to fight a student, we brought you in the schoolyard, and whatever you got when you were leaving, that was, between you and whoever. But we took care of ourselves and of each other. And it was okay with Mr. McDonald and all the headmasters and mistresses after and before. It was fine. And we came out looking really good.
It's my memories of Mr. McDonald. I'll start there. Growing up in Linden, getting into Mackenzie High School as a kid was, let's say, the ultimate goal if you were in primary school and you were interested in the books or in learning. When my family found out that I passed common entrance to go in to attend Mackenzie High School, I can tell you my parents were over the moon. And when I got to back in those days, I think a few weeks before school opened, you get a tour of the school, and then a few days later you collect your books and so forth. So the first time I met Mr. McDonald was on the tour of the school, and I can remember him as this. Well, everyone was big when you're 9 years old. Everyone seems very huge, but this big guy with a shirt jack and a strict. Just looking at him with this, you know that that discipline was a big part of what you would be expecting once you got to Mackenzie High School. And I can tell you, once I started there, we weren't disappointed, but some of the values that we got due to Mr. McDonald and his leadership of the other teachers at the school is still with us. And a lot of us who are here, who are successful, and I tell Mackenzie High School is known for the success of a student. I think Mr. McDonald was basically the architect of that get us to where we are today in life. And his contribution to Linden as a community, to Guyana, and to us individually as students, I think we can never underestimate. It's beyond value. It's beyond value for the what he has given us as a man, as a son of Guyana. And his legacy is now felt throughout the world and in a positive way. Very few people can actually say that. We can say that about very few people, and Mr. McDonald is up there with them. So I just like to say this is a sad occasion, but his legacy will live on in us and in our children and our children's children.
I'm calling from the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm compelled to say something because Mr. McDonald had always been or played an active part in my life from a very tender age. I want to do some reflections. I want to have some very good memories of Mr. McDonald as my headmaster. It's all started in 1973. I attended MHS on the 15th of September, 1973. My dad knew him because my dad was a carpenter and he worked for Mackenzie High School in 1972. Now, I remember very clearly that the closing mark to enter Mackenzie High School was 330 marks you had to attain, but I only had 329. Because of the fact that my dad knew him, he graciously looked at me and said that he will grant me entrance into the Mackenzie High School. This I am extremely grateful to him for. I started out in Form 1C, and I can tell you those students in my Form 1C, they excelled. I can speak of the judge, Yonette Cummins, that was my best friend in Form 1C, and a lot of other colleagues, Eon Blair, and quite a number of other persons who have done extremely well in their career path. Attending high school in Form 1, you know, you're not settled or anything. You don't know what it is to get settled and studied and everything. But he was able to guide us along that path. He was a disciplinarian, but in a way that made you aware that you have to do certain things correctly. I remember him quietly walking on the concrete, and as soon as we heard those footsteps, we knew that Mr. McDonald was coming. Another thing that stood out for him is that he always had that toothpick, you know, in his teeth, and he walking down and he watching at you and you're busy trying to explain something to him. But he would always listen to you, and that I admire him for. Even while I had completed my A-levels, I remember I was very young because I went through school, you know, at each length of the way. So I couldn't get a job immediately. So I came at the school to collect my results, and he asked me what I was doing. I said to him that I haven't got any meaningful employment because, you know, I have to start at 18. He said, you know what? I think you will make a good teacher. Let me see what A-level subjects you have. Right away, he made up that decision that I should start teaching mathematics at the Mackenzie High School. That has molded me significantly into the person that I have become. What I like about Mr. McDonald is that he was a strategist. He'd not only give you that academic part of it, he gave you a whole holistic approach to life. We had to do agriculture. At one time, we had a pond in the yard. We were fish farming. We had tilapia. There were so many things. We had the chicken pen. So it gives us a very rounded approach, you know, to our personal development. And he was just a people person. He could be around everyone and you're very comfortable. And with these sentiments, you know, I really cherish those moments, and I want to see it as a memorable occasion. He will always be in my mind, not only for what he has done for me personally, but I'm quite sure that he would have done similar things to other students because he had us well molded in the right direction. And I can tell you that a number of students that came out from Mackenzie High School has made it to the top all over the Caribbean, Europe, all over, you will find students from Mackenzie High School.
Mr. McDonald, I think Mr. McDonald was, I have very foggy memories about whether or not it was the year. Like when we started MHS, it was Mr. Johnson, I believe. That was our headmaster, but there's never been any doubt about who laid the foundation about, how we proceed as a school and a community. I believe the infrastructure was built by Mr. McDonald and his predecessors. So I just wanted to say that, you know, I make fun of a lot of other students in Linden. Even today, like I posted something because I knew we were going to do, a tribute today for Mr. McDonald, kind of just razzing, our Multi and Tello and other students in Linden, because I know for a fact that our school was the epitome of what everyone aspired to go to because of people like Mr. McDonald and what they put in place. I could not be more grateful to be someone who went to Mackenzie High School, because I still think that we really got the advantage. When you talk about life, I'm not saying that we were perfect or that our school was perfect. We certainly were not. But I believe one of the things that I feel so proud of is the fact that we had amazing mentors. And if you listen to the people like on this call, or even people who speak of, Mr. McDonald, I have to say that one of the things that I'm so grateful for is the fact that we can look back and think, we come from a very, very, very strong, structure that made the way for us, like really laid a foundation for us to be able to do incredibly well in life. And I know he had a lot to do with that. I want to say thank you to his sons who always share him. I loved seeing the pictures of him, of his birthday and Clifton, and, always posting, wonderful memories, so that we can look back and pay tribute to him and give him his flowers while he was still here. It's sad that he's gone, but I have to say he had a very long, amazing life with people who clearly loved him so, so much. So I just want to say, as an MHS alum, I'm very grateful for everything that he did, and the people that came after him, because they used his template, to build an amazing school and create wonderful, sort of plans and structures and things in place for us to follow as students. I'm grateful for that. I know, a lot of my friends from MHS are grateful too. We are still the best. I don't care what multi say. I don't care what they say. We're still the best school that there's ever been. And Andrew, I want to say thank you to you for keeping our spirit and everything alive. I'm always willing to do whatever we need to do to help make the school better. And I know everyone, that's on this call are also willing to do that. So thank you, Mr. McDonald, and thank you to everyone who followed his template to make the school what it became and what it still is today. Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry to hear, and I'm sending my condolences to the family. Mr. McDonald, he obviously was the headmaster at my school. Good days, very good days. Yeah, what more can I say? It's just history.
I just want to send out condolences to Mr. McDonald and family, and advise them to, stay strong, and we are here to support everyone, support them, and we're thankful for the contribution he's made to our school.
The little I remember of Mr. McDonald, of him just being very strict. So it was a few of us that attended Mackenzie High School from my home. My oldest brother, Philip, who was in class with Robin. So, watching them being disciplined by Mr. McDonald, allowed me to stay on the straight and narrow. So I learned to, just follow the rules, stay focused, and, just do what I was there to do. So knowing as well from, again, listening to my brother, my sister, Philip and Sharon, and, older cousins speak of Mr. McDonald, even before I started high school, you knew of the principled and disciplined man that he was. When I got the information from Robin yesterday, and I saw that, he was born in 1922, he died this year is 2022. I reflected on my dad. So he and my dad would have been of the same era. And so my dad as well was also a disciplined man. So from home, you have that kind of discipline, and you go to school and you have that kind of discipline, you were bound to excel. And that is what I think, just listening to everyone else as well. He was like a father figure for all of us at school. And so we did all that we needed to do to excel. And he ensured that, I guess, as a parent himself, that we, the students, were like his children. We all excelled. So condolences to the entire McDonald family. And, as well, thanks for allowing him to mentor us, to guide us, to direct, set us in the right direction so that we could be as we are today, well established and accomplished citizens of this world, because we are scattered throughout the world.
What I remember of Mr. McDonald was his way of, having students raise their standard. Once you wore the Mackenzie High School uniform and the badge, you not only represented your family, but you also represented the school. So you had to, carry yourself in a certain way that represented Mackenzie High School. He was very strict. One of the things I remembered, going home from school one afternoon, and two of the girls from my class were about to get into a fight. And we were in front of this house. I remember, I'm not going to call the names, but the lady came out. She asked us to, break it up and get home. She did that about twice. And were still hanging around waiting for the fight to start. And she went in. The next thing we knew was that the blue car, Mr. McDonald's blue car, was racing up the street. We all tried to run, but of course, he caught us. So took us back, piled us all in the car, took us back to school. And we had a strict talking to. So those are the things that I carried through life, and remembering the things, Mr. McDonald has taught us. Another thing is choosing Miss Isaacs as a student teacher, or maybe a young teacher. She was one of my math teachers in Mackenzie High School. And because of her teaching of math, I began to like math. And eventually now I'm teaching math at Medgar College. So those are the things I just like to impart, and to also at this point thank Miss Isaacs for teaching, math. And my condolences to the McDonald family.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Faye Mendoza Allen. I earlier introduced myself as a former student of Mackenzie High School during 1980 to 87. So for 3 years, I've been under the tutelage of Principal, our late great Clifton McDonald Sr. I'm here at the Woodbine Hall in Brooklyn, New York, and we have some other students of Mackenzie High School, past students, and other friends and persons who have interacted with Mr. Clifton McDonald and whom he has impacted in some great and positive way. So I'm going to turn you over now to about two persons who are here waiting in the audience to speak to the good that they have encountered with their interactions with Clifton McDonald Sr. His soul rest in peace.
1972. Mr. McDonald and myself, we have a very special relationship. I'm one of the students that we started out on rocky grounds, but after 2 years under his tutelage, Mr. McDonald has impacted my life in a very positive way. After 1974, shortly thereafter, I migrated here, and Mr. McDonald, when he came here to the United States, he was very impactful in my life. He would always encourage me. He's been more than a teacher to me. He's been a friend. He's been a mentor. Today, we're going to miss him. And most of the students in Mackenzie High School that he has taught, and even the students here, he's always been a very positive person. He would always encourage you to do your best. That's what he did for me. And today is a very sad day for the alumni in Mackenzie High School. I'm one of those persons who are going to miss him and miss his tutelage. I encourage you to be a part of whatever, or do whatever you can do to carry on what he has imparted with us. And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that his name rings anywhere where students from Mackenzie High School is.
My name is Leroy Nelson. I'm also a former student of Mackenzie High School. Like Curtis before, I would have attended Mackenzie High School from 1977 until 1982 or 83. Mr. McDonald, originally, when he came to Linden in 1972, he was a family friend to my parents. When we would have completed our common entrance, there were some of us who passed to go to schools in Georgetown or to multilateral schools, but I think at that time in 1975 they had opened up the multilateral schools. So some of us had to go to multi. After about a year, there were some problems. One day I saw Mr. McDonald at the bank and said to me, "Young man, aren't you supposed to be coming to MHS?" Knowing who he is and the strict disciplinarian that he was at that time, I was not prepared to go to MHS. Anyhow, the Christmas of 1977, he and my dad decided that I have to go to Mackenzie High School. From that time, he walked me to Lyshus to Form 2 and began his mentorship, his tutelage, his inspiration for us in pursuing academic excellence. He was rigid in that and not compromising in that way. When I would have completed Mackenzie High School in sixth form, he would have been the first person to provide me with employment because his GCE, CFC class had a history teacher who had gotten pregnant. And so he said, "Nancy, you have to teach my exam class." I said, "Mr. Mack, I just love school." He said, "Don't worry, you know it." So first time he provided me with employment. I did that. Shortly thereafter, he graduated. I migrated to the United States. And there's where Mr. McDonald, more than being a principal, became a pivotal and critical person in my life. He was like my second dad. His home was like my home. Like Curtis said, he was our mentor. He provided you with advice. Still pursuing academic excellence regardless of call. And Linden and our community we mourn, especially the former students and those of us who were close to him. Because Mr. McDonald was many things, but living in the United States and being around him, you got to see more than who the educator were, who the educator was. The human side of him, he was about nurturing, was about being the most amazing husband to his wife Shirley McDonald, to his children, Rose, Donna, Clifton, Clifford, Camille, his grandchildren, his sisters, his nephews. You have to be around Mr. McDonald to see that nurturing them. I mean, in life, some people, we grow up as young men and we got our heroes from comic books. Now we get our heroes from movies. But he was a living example of what a truly emancipated black man, West Indian, educator, father, husband, most of all human beings, and he's raised them. So although he would have left us on the 2nd of January after 99 great years of his heart, Mr. McDonald will live with many of us. We may never be able to live to his standards, but like what he always used to say to me, they'll keep pursuing excellence. And for that, may his soul rest in eternal peace. And those of us at Mackenzie High School, let us just continue to live his trail. May he rest in peace.
My name is Andrew Wallace. Attended Mackenzie High School between the years of 72, I think 72 to 78, right? Came from a little village in Upper Demerara named Comacao. So my first experience with Mackenzie High School was overwhelming. I actually learned that the grass was being called the greens. That's the first that I got to Mackenzie High School. But I got there and my interaction with Mr. McDonald, who I called at that time and still today called Sir, because his guidance has impacted my life in so many ways. Because as a little boy coming from a riverine district in Camargo, whereby when you get up in the morning to get to school, you got to get to the river and bathe in the river, right? Is impacted me. Um, my I can remember vividly my fourth farm year. Okay, that's when you got to know the man as a person and as a teacher, as an educator, right? Um, I was not this very disciplined guy at school at times because I probably would have gotten into trouble because uh, maybe went to school late or something of the sort. And one day, Mr. McDonald, after being put out of class, after being probably being rude to my teacher at the time, got put out of class. Mr. McDonald was walking down the corridor like he normally do, and said, "Mr. Qualis, what are you doing outside?" Explained to him what was the situation. He said, "Go to my office and wait for me." Went to his office and thinking then, because back then you can gotta get some lashes, right? And I went into his class, went into his office, waited for him. Mr. Giddings was in the secretary at the front desk. Went into the office, waited for him. Got in there. Surprisingly, we started a conversation, and that conversation, I think, changed the whole concept who I had of the man at that time, because between the Form 1 and Form 3 era is a guy that you probably would have been scared of because of the disciplinary measures that he would have been taking along from the time he got there, right? And is someone that you probably would have probably had a little fear of. But after having that conversation with him, um, I realized this guy is not just an educator, a disciplinarian. He's a human being and he can relate to some of the issues that you probably would have had as a kid, being coming from the area that you came from. You understand, understanding the things that you did not think he understood. You understand? And I became somewhat um, a very, for a matter of fact, I think a lot of my attitudes changed, right? Because he became like this figure that would guide you as a father figure. Because I came from a single parent home, right? Having that person, that male figure there to tell you certain things, teach you certain things, and guide you along certain disciplines. And he became that figure for me. at the age of, I think I was about 14, 13, 14 at that time, right? Until I graduated from high school. He got me my first job. I was, one day, my mom worked at the town council, all right? And one day my mom sent me to pay an installment at the then, I think it was Guyana stores, right? And I think about a week before, the guys, some of the guys who were still at school said, Mr. McDonald wants to see you, right? Didn't want to go because I thought that, okay, here what? I've been spent 4 years in high school, 5 years in high school, been running the books. You understand? I ain't think I really want some time to have some kind of leisure right now. I ain't really want to go to work. I ain't want to do nothing. Just want to relax. But I have to pass at Mackenzie High School, and while passing, them guys keep, think it was Lambert Gibbons' brother, scholar, and a guy by the name of Gavin Huntley. These guys called out to me. The Mark want to see you. Went into his office. Said, Mr. Qualis, what are you doing? Said, I ain't doing nothing yet, sir. So, well, okay, let me look at your grades. What? Are you working? I said, no, sir. So, where are you going now? Said, I'm going to Guyana stores to pay this and stuff. He said, okay, you're going to Guyana stores? There's a guy by the name of Mr. McIntosh. He's the manager there. Tell him I sent you. Go and work. This is where I start my first job, right? By the time I got to Mr. McIntosh, went to pay the bill and asked to speak to Mr. McIntosh, Mr. McIntosh said, your principal called me. And I started work. That's it. So for me, Mr. McDonald, right, sir, as we probably would have called him, he was much more than a teacher for me. He was much more the principal of Mackenzie High School. He was much more than sir. He was the guy that advised me as a teenager, was the father figure to explain certain things to me. Let me understand that, okay, I'm getting into this stage of my life that there are going to be changes, right? And you're going to start feeling a certain way. And this is what is expected of you as a teenager coming through. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the lessons that was being taught by him. I'm grateful for the guidance that he's given me. You understand? I know that we're going to miss a lot of us are going to miss him because of a couple of the reasons I mentioned, right? When I came to United States, I got the chance to meet him. I think it was 2003 or 2004. They had a reunion in, I think it was Maryland. And one of the persons who was organizing that reunion was, her name was Cedar Booker. And Cedar Booker called me once and asked me, what do you think we should do for this reunion? I said, one thing you should do is somewhere along the line, see if you can find Mr. McDonald and invite him. Somehow or the other, she got to doing that, and I got to meet him there, and we had a very wonderful time in Maryland. And I'm grateful that I did got to meet him when I came to the United States of America. I'd like to say, may his soul rest in peace. My sympathy and condolence goes out to his family, all his kids. I know the two girls, the two boys. Yes, I think I know those. You understand? Clifton, you know Clifton, right? So may his soul rest in peace. I know that he brought a lot of he brought a lot to Mackenzie High School, and we're grateful for that. Thank you.
It's interesting to know that if I may, Mr. McDonald, I didn't know him personally, but from all the emails, the texts, and the nice sentiments I'm getting, I think it's fair to say we need more Mr. McDonald in the world today, especially in the community of Linden.
I met Mr. McDonald in 1970 at Christchurch, and I have been in contact with him ever since because of the fact that He has a sister who lately passed, Joyce Edwards, and and myself and her son are very, very good friends, and we always in contact. So I always saw Mr. McDonald anything that the Edwards had because I was always there, and he has always been very professional. And I don't know how many of you guys know that. Well, let me put it this way: when I started Christchurch, it wasn't the East or the Western Wing. He was very much involved in starting that project, and somehow or the other during the process, he had left and he was transferred to Mackenzie High. But I'd just like to give my sincere sympathy to the McDonald families and the Edwards families. All right, may his soul rest in peace.
My name is Marilyn Massey. I started Mackenzie High School in 1972. At that time, Mackenzie High School was transitioning headmasters from Cummins, who had died in an accident. I think Backer was the standing headmaster, acting headmaster at the time, and Mr. McDonald was coming like later on the year. But before Mr. McDonald came, there was a lot of picketing because no one wanted him. No one knew him. But I remember picketing also, but I didn't know what I was picketing for. And long story short, Mr. McDonald turned out to be one of the best headmasters that Mackenzie High School ever had. I went on to sixth form, and while in sixth form, I was given the opportunity to teach biology. I was a very shy teacher, but I was very thankful for the opportunity. It was a privilege, and condolences to the family.
Camille Cummings here out of Linden, Guyana. It's a privilege to be part of this session. I just got a reminder from Nancy Massey, and that's how I just fell into the session without even preparing myself. Nevertheless, I'm Camille Cummings out of Linden, Guyana. I was privileged to be a student under Mr. Clifford McDonald, and that was from 1978 to 1984. I would have been there a year after he would have left. We had a very good relationship with him between our farm 3 to 5 years. He was the head teacher that you could have approached, and you could have shared your vision for the school with him, and he would buy into it once he found that it was going to be a successful venture. We had a drama group, and we did activities that brought in money, but the only thing we could not understand with him is that when you finish having this fundraiser, the money had to be put there, and he was like never in favor of us now spending from it or turning it over. It was like just put there and remain there until another venture, but he probably had his reason behind that. I had one confrontation with him in his office, of which I was not part of the activity, but because my friend was involved, and that's Sharon Chin out of Barbados, because she was involved, I got pulled in because he knew we were partners, and I had to share in the lashes for what may have occurred in the group. But he was a great man. He was a great educator, one who made great contributions to Mackenzie High School. Thank you much for the privilege of allowing me to say such.
Good evening, everyone. On this very sad night, thanks everyone for joining in. I see quite a few people on here. I'm actually in Woodbine Ballroom. I want to thank Stay and the team, Curtis and the team for putting this event on. And it's just getting filled up in here. It's, as everyone knows, it's an Omicron COVID time in Brooklyn, New York. And we don't want to be overcrowded in here, but some very good friends of Mr. McDonald came in. We'll have ex-students performing, and we'll try to bring this show to you as it goes on. I'm not going to give a tribute to my dad now, I'll do it later, but I just want to tell folks, hang in there, enjoy the evening of reminiscing, and there'll be more thoughts coming, and I'll probably close out later in the night. But again, guys, thanks for joining. Stay with us and enjoy your time reminiscing about your favorite headmaster, your favorite teacher. I've traveled all of Guyana, and quite recently up to, I was in Guyana in December. No, it was January, sorry. And December. Been a long month. And I was in Esquibo, and someone in Esquibo said, I introduced myself. I said, I'm Clifton McDonald. He said, Clifton McDonald? I said, yeah. He said, I had a McDonald that taught me. Used to beat me bad. I said, yeah, that's my father. Does he look like this? And I took out my phone and showed him a picture. He said, yes, that's the man. And then I got into all the great stories about him, right? So that's been a lot of my life. I'll share more with you later tonight, some more tomorrow. But do stay around, stick around, enjoy the show. For those out there who want to get to Woodbine Ballroom, there is a lot of food in here. I don't know where it's going to go. Maybe I have to do a grab bag, a gift and grab and go, whatever we got to do. We have a lot of food here. Come on down. Students prepare the food. Ex-students did all the work. So please come on in and enjoy. Okay. Stay, could I pass it back on? Or, I'm sorry, I did not mention Andrew James. I just, with my dad passing, you just meet everyone else that was impacted by him. And Andrew James, not a direct student of his, probably came to MHS after, and he could give his own history. But he's doing a lot for MHS AA, and Andrew, appreciate the hard work. I send you stuff you posted, get it right. I do want to thank you for all you've done and continue to do as we mourn the death of our great headmaster and dad. Thank you.
Like I said, I am from the Christchurch end of things, the class of 72. And that's the year when he left Christchurch. We left together. Huh? He left and went to Mackenzie, and I left and went on with life. But as I was saying earlier, the important moments of Christchurch, to which Mr. McDonald was the main contributor. Someone just a while ago mentioned the fact that he was integral to the expansion of the physical structure of Christchurch. The school as it is now is thrice the size of the school he met. But he worked along with the then Archbishop, Alan Guyana, to raise resources from the UK and locally, and to mobilize the students. And we did self-help to build, to extend that school to the size it presently is under his leadership. And so we had a tremendous exposure, learning to do things other than the academic work that you were involved in. I became a block maker through that exercise at Christchurch School. Mr. McDonald was someone who found a way, though he wasn't in class, to interact with the students. And one of the methods he used was the annual camp the prefects used to have. When he was headmaster, the prefects used to go to an annual camp. In fact, the last such camp was one held in Suriname, where unfortunately the son of one of the teachers, Mr. Luke, who taught geography, drowned. And so that, in fact, brought that exercise to an end. But Mr. McDonald uh, spearheaded that kind of activity. And on those camps, he actually spent time with the students, with the prefects. Mr. McDonald, in some regards, must have done psychology because he interacted with the students from a number of perspectives. On one hand, he mentored us, but on the other hand, he very subtly debriefed us to get an understanding of who we were, and therefore that allowed him to mentor us because he then knew who he was dealing with. So he was a very, very smart guy in that regard. But I have never been a victim of the cane, but he was also very proficient at the use of the cane when that became necessary. He was an affable person. There was a particular peculiar smile very often, which he carried. I remember that. You could always see him smiling as he came along to check on the classes. As I said, he wasn't a staff room based headmaster. He found time to come around and to see what was happening in the various classes. And you know, it really paid an interest in students. Though he never taught me, I have this lasting memory and impact of him identifying what he thought to be an area of weakness in my academic work. And in fact, through constructive criticism, inspiring me to work harder and better. And I think I'm now recognized in some regard for that area, which I'm not going to mention. But he was the one who really said to me, you know, you're a little weak here, you need to do some more work. And it inspired me. And so tonight we really celebrated the life of an educator who made a significant contribution to the schools at which he worked. And I can say definitely about Christchurch. And in fact, an educator who contributed not only to those schools, but to the wider education system. And so really, I am honored and privileged that this activity has been organized to grant people like myself who owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. McDonald to be able to pay tribute to him, to celebrate his life, and sadly, to express condolences to his family on this the occasion of his passing. You know, it is past at 99 years of age. But he was more than 99. He was into his 100th year. And I would prefer to say it that way. Rather than to say he was 99, I would say he passed in his 100th year. And that in itself is also an achievement and some demonstration of the way in which he lived his life. May his soul rest in peace.
But I just had to add to Vincent's little chat that he had there about Christchurch. You know, there was so much that Mr. McDonald did for Christchurch that I forgot about the camps that he had initiated within the school, and that was all about the togetherness of the students of Christchurch, because I was part of the camps. I was a prefect, and I went to 3 camps: Bartica, Lethem, and Suriname. So I was there when Lester Luke lost his life. But there was so much that Mr. McDonald did for Christchurch as a school, as for the students, and you know, molding their lives, they're changing their way of thinking and everything, that it would take us all, I don't know, forever to talk about it. But I just wanted to mention that the last time I saw Mr. McDonald was at a reunion held in Brooklyn, because I live in Canada, Ottawa, Canada. But this reunion, at the reunion, I had made copies of the prefect body, which he was a part of, and I had extra pictures because I took extra photos. So when I showed it to him, he said, "Oh, can I have this?" I said, "With pleasure, Mr. McDonald." The one thing that I could have given back to him, that I was speaking with his daughter, Carol, and she said she found that picture and she was going to post it someplace, in the collage of pictures when they were doing that. So there was this connection that I feel that I just had to talk about. So just to add to Vincent's talk just now, and thank you, Vincent, for remembering everything about Christchurch, or even more about Christchurch, because we feel kind of lost within the group here because there are not too many Christchurchers here. It's really Mackenzie's forum, but there was so much he did that I just had to add a little piece more, if you don't mind, but I had to add that. He was the bomb. Thank you.
What I would say fairly shortly is, condolences to the family. I see many names here that I recognize, but I left Mackenzie High School before most of you. And one thing I would add to all of the commendations that have been voiced is that in the fortune I've had in getting into different academic environments, I always look back at my time at Mackenzie High School and the environment that was there, with great memories, in the sense that that student body and that academic environment measured up against any undergraduate or graduate environment that I've been in since. And I just wanted to say that, just even though if it's joining a chorus of several voices already, because that was a great achievement on behalf of that Mr. McDonald achieved there.
It was very sad for me this past week, to not only hear about Mr. McDonald's passing, but also for the passing there of the actor. And I recall that, those are two figures in my life who played very important roles, people who I tried to model my life after. But more so, I must say, Mr. McDonald played a very critical role in my life, in the sense that I had completed fifth form in the arts stream, and I got 5 subjects at GC and CXC, but it was not subjects that I wanted to pursue, because by the end of fifth form, that first year in fifth form, I had come to the realization that I wanted to become an engineer or an architect. And I remember going to Mr. McDonald and saying to him, Mr. McDonald, I'm only 15 years old. It's difficult for me to get a job. I don't have the requirements for sixth form. So I would like to repeat fifth form in the science stream. And he said to me, you have between now and the end of December to prove to me that you can do physics, chemistry, and add maths in 1 year, or that you can be prepared for those subjects. And he gave me that encouragement and told me, listen, if you sit down and you instead of playing soccer or doing whatever, you spend the time doing your studies, you can make it. And in December, when it was time to sign up for our subjects, he came back to me and he said, look, you do these 5. For the maths, physics, graphical communication, mathematics, and English. And I'm guaranteeing that you will end up in sixth form. By the end of that exam or that year, he would have left in 1983. But I was in lower 6 the following year. And I owe that to Mr. McDonald. He has been an encouragement to not only myself, but to my brother, Michael, and also to a lot of people within the community, including his wife too, because I remember she was my headmistress when I was at Mackenzie Primary School. And it's a great loss to our community, but he has lived a life, full life, that was well spent and reached to many others around. My condolences to his children, his grandchildren, and the rest of the family and the Mackenzie High School circle.
But Mr. McDonald, when he came to Mackenzie High School, I think I was in the first batch of students, third form. I was there when he came, right? And right through my schooling, Mr. McDonald was there. I then became a teacher, lab tech at Mackenzie High School, then a teacher at Mackenzie High School, and I left before Mr. McDonald left. I met Mr. McDonald about 10 years ago, and we did have a really good conversation at one of the Alumni Association meetings. He reminded me of, I just could not understand how Mr. McDonald could have remembered Mr. Kwabila, who tried to stay in the squad all the time, but he did. One of the things that Vincent mentioned was that Mr. McDonald had these groups. In fact, it was the prefects of Mackenzie High School who went on these annual trips. And I did remember us going to let them go into Jonestown. We did visit Jonestown just the same year of the tragedy. We did go to quite a few places, but it was his way of bonding with his students and understanding and knowing his students properly. Right. So I think he was a great mentor, right? And when I met him last, we spoke about him teaching in the United States, and he told me he was teaching, I think the last place he taught was PS 246. And he said, Q, you know, I used to give lessons after school. I used to give the kids lessons, the weaker ones lessons after school, and they stopped me. It's nothing like Guyana, right? So, you know, he really did have students' interest at heart, right? And he tried his best to make you operate at your full potential. I'd like to express my condolences to his family, his wife, Carol, Clifton, Carol, Donna. Those are the four I know. And my condolences to you. Mr. McDonald did live a full life. And I think his legacy lives on.
I think, right? Yeah. I think it's good now.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Gotcha. All right. Good evening, all. I know we have a lot of people to say all those good things about Mr. McDonald. Clifton McDonald Sr. For me, I look at Mr. McDonald as a husband, father, grandfather, educator, community worker, inter alia. If we take a look at the amount of years that Mr. McDonald has graced us with his presence, we know that we have all other descriptions that we can ascribe to him. But for me, that's how I see him. And I can talk about Mr. McDonald through different lenses because I was not a student of his, but I had the privilege of sharing space with him as an educator. And my earliest memory of him was in 1974 when I graduated from University of Guyana, and I went there for an interview. And unfortunately, I was not successful at that interview, and I did not work with him. But what I admired about Mr. McDonald is that even though I did not work at MHS and I worked with the multilateral school, he still found time to come over to the multilateral school to see how I was doing. And that left such an indelible print in my mind, because then I understood here was a human being who was broad-minded enough to say, even though I did not take you on as one of my teachers, I still want to know how you're doing educating our young minds. And so that as an educator, he was not just centered on his school in his turf, but he was concerned about the entire Linden. He came by, he observed some of my work, he was very happy about it. And that left the mark to say, here is a true educator, someone who is interested in all of our children. The second part that stands out about Mr. McDonald, and which most of his students might not know because they did not interact with him at that level, is Mr. McDonald as a husband. His wife was his queen. Mr. McDonald treated his wife with so much respect, love, and care that one day I said to him that in addition to being an educator, I would love for him to set up a mentoring organization to mentor young men to know how it is that they must treat their wives and as an extension, their families. And so that's the second aspect of this great human being, this great man that I admired about him. Another area, as a father and a grandfather. If you know Mr. McDonald well, he is not openly aggressive, but he is constantly persistent. And so that as a dad and a grandparent, his kids understood what is expected of them through that resilience, through that calm aggression, through the way in which he set out the expectations for his children, his grandchildren. And I was able to witness that in his grandson, because a few years ago, I started working at another school where I met his grandson. And upon saying to him, and I heard the young man's name, Clifton McDonald III, and I said to the young man, your granddad is Mr. McDonald, the principal from Linden. And immediately you can see that the young man put on that coat of expectation. And it was a joy to watch the way, having recognized that here it is, that someone knew his grandfather, and immediately what is expected of him, I watched this young man took on a different posture in school. And needless to say that he graduated from high school within his 4.5 years with both his high school diploma and an associate's degree. And so that as you talk about this great man, you can, it is right for us not to measure him not only in what he has done as an educator, but we also need to measure him in terms of what his children have done and what his grandchildren have done. And of course, I guess we're going to be talking about great-grandchildren somewhere down the line. And so that for me, Mr. Mac is what I call him, is somebody who embodies the truthfulness of what a good human being is. And so as we share in our experiences with him tonight, I know it's a little painful, but I want us to go away knowing that we are going away with a part of this great man. Luckily for me, I came to the United States and Mr. McDonald and I taught at the same school. So I was able to witness him through a different modus. He was now no longer the principal or the headmaster. He joined the staff as what we would call the regular teacher. Now you have to remember that I know of Mr. McDonald's status in Linden. And now here it is, he's coming into the Big Apple as we describe it. And he has taken up a position as just a regular teacher. And it was something to behold as I watched this man navigate that environment where no one there really understood what his previous experience was, and to see how it is he shared with such equanimity, with such calmness, with all the other teachers, sharing his knowledge, teaching his students, not wearing that emblem that I am a headmaster, I was a headmaster. And Mr. McDonald worked there consistently, conscientiously, educating those children, and also sharing in a very quiet way what his knowledge is, and as he shared with the younger teachers. While he was there, he was given the status subsequently as an assistant principal, and he continued along the same vein without pomp and circumstance. Mr. McDonald did not show off. He didn't wear all of his worth on his sleeves, but he went about in a very calm way, knowing what his purpose was on earth, and that is to ensure that the young people who come within his space must get the best that he can offer them. He left there and he went into the public system, where he gave it his best shot. And upon his retirement, Mr. McDonald said to me that he has given it his all, and it's time for him to put up his gloves and spend some time with his wife and his family. So for me, this father, this husband, this great man, having spent 99 years on this earth, 99 years, and I think it's 2.5 months, he has given us extra. And so that I want to say to his wife and his children, his grandchildren, that God has been good to you. I want you to take all that he has given you. I want you to listen to all that you've been hearing about him tonight, and to go forward in life knowing that here was a great man who has traversed this earth, who has done his best, and has bid us goodbye. And let us continue to love the way that Mr. McDonald loved his wife, his family, how he loved teaching young minds, and to ensure that we, as I call us Lindeners from the village, that we can continue his legacy, we can add to his legacy, and let us continue to share in love for each other. Mrs. McDonald, I know you're going to miss that's your buddy, that's your partner, but you have us. Just call. There's always a voice. Just call. We can chat. You know how I feel about you. Carol, Clifton, Clifford, and the grandkids. And so that I want to step off now to say to everyone, thank you for the evening, and let us continue to live in love. Thank you.
A teacher affects eternity. You can never tell where you're taking stop. These are the words of historian and journalist Henry Adams. I'm so honored to be given the opportunity to try to say words fitting for a man to whom great honors due. Mr. Mackenzie was a man who wore many hats and embodied many titles. As a principal of Mackenzie High School, his displayed leadership was exemplary, strong, and effective. He started the student population on the supervision because of dominating culture and stood out all around. Mackenzie High School was a beacon and a model high school, not only for Linden, but the culture of Guyana at large. The school was adopted by the bauxite industry, which served as a pipeline positioning the school for great success at every level. Mackenzie High School was second to none. The school led the way in sports, performing arts, track and field, debate, and many other academic programs, providing accommodation for teachers, allowed for the employment of high-caliber teachers, both foreign and local, to be a part of the Mackenzie High School team. Some such teachers were spouses of expatriates affiliated with the bauxite industry, which was a plus for the community. Remembering a few of the great teachers associated with the last tenure were Mr. Bob and Ms. Ward. These were the music teachers. Madam Porter, French. Ms. Holder, dancing in the performing arts. Reverend Williams, history. Jenny Cave, English. Mr. Caesar, science. Mr. Kwamina, science. Some other memorable names who left a legacy in art and technical drawing or Mr. Peter Penn, Mr. Sheila Penn, Mr. Perry Shangaza, history, Mr. Riley Matt. And so my current name of Mr. Max Social Group were Clifton A, Wilbur and Suku, Carl Limerick, George Daniel, White Johnson, Black Johnson, and many others. Mr. Max managed a well-oiled machine. On the social side, he would socialize with the baby staff, having a social drink occasionally.
I was, as Marlon said, Marlon and I were classmates. We started Mackenzie High School together in 1972. And the prefects pulled us out and had us protesting. We weren't quite, because, you know, this new person was coming to the area that nobody knew. And we just followed the crowd and went out there. But then Mr. McDonald came in 1972, yes, and we were in first form. And we all fell in line. I felt the cane a couple of times. One time when I guess I didn't do well on a French test or something, and the teacher sent us to the office. And then I remember one time when I was in fifth form and I was feeling myself, I got this new pair of brown shoes, but the uniform was black. And I didn't have time to stay in the shoes, and I wanted to wear them to school. So I put on my brown shoes and I went to school. And Mr. McDonald shouted across I was like walking across towards the lab, and he shouted across from the office to me. And of course I had to make sure because I was out of uniform, because I had on brown shoes and not black. Those are two things that I remember vividly. But I must say, as so many have said, he was really a great educator, a great administrator, and the teachers that we had at Mackenzie High School have helped us to really excel in whatever field that we have gone on to as students of that great institution. I extend my condolences to the McDonald family and extended family, and to the Mackenzie High School family. And I know we will all continue to do the best to continue the wonderful legacy of all those great educators who helped to mold us, like Clifton McDonald.
Yeah, Mr. Mark. I knew Mr. Mark from 1958 when he came to St. John's Anglican School there in study Essequibo. I was a young pupil teacher at that time, and Mr. Mark was a great mentor to me. He was like a father to me for the years that he was in Essequibo, and all the years that I followed, stayed in touch with him at Christ Church and then at Linden. Mr. Mark started an agricultural program at St. John's. We had the school garden, raised money. Mr. Mark wanted to extend the school because it was, not large enough. He had a lot of fundraising exercises, bingos, dances. Oh man. And we were able to raise a lot of money and put a wing onto that school. Okay. Mr. Mark started the Boy Scout. He was a scout. He was a scout master. He started a Boy Scout there at St. John's, and we had some great times. We went on quite a few camping trips, and the most memorable was the trip that we had to Mackenzie just before the 80-day strike. Boy, getting back, or girl, I'm not so sure who was talking, who was there. Getting back from Linden, Mackenzie, to our home in Adventure and Study, it was something. But Mr. Mark, given who he is, he was able to negotiate that because we had to break camp, get right back. When we got there, we had the boats running to take us to Mackenzie. And then when we got word that the strike had started, there was no transportation, no boats. And boy, getting back to Essequibo, he was able to do that safely for us. Okay. Mr. Mark, what can we say about him? He has been a good friend, right? A mentor, as I said, a dad, not only to myself, but to people like Ruben, Theo, who else Yvonne and Roy Tatio, Edwin Bess, Winston Sandiford, those, and the Griffiths, Carl Austin, and a whole host. That is what Mr. Mack was all about. Helping people, growing young people, helping them to achieve their goals and dreams. I know we will miss him. We all. That's who Mr. Mark was. For over 60 years, I knew him.
Captain Wakey, boatman, boatman Wakey, bowman, bowman Wakey, the paddle in the hand. All I want is a love and strong is too much to me. Love and strong, he's and me. Captain, put me ashore. I don't want to go anymore. Tell me you're frightened me. Tell me you bust my belly. Tell me you're drunk with me. He tell me you're too much to me. He tell me, he tell me, he tell me, he tell me, boy. Captain, put me ashore. I don't want to go anymore. Tell me you're frightened me. Tell me you're drunk with me. Tell me you're too much to me. Tell me you bust my belly. He tell me, 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 boy. He telling me it's for lack of money. Find it up there in Mama City. Come down, hang on the bar, take a city. Meet a nice girl who named Susie. Next morning he pocket half empty. Travel down to Georgetown City. He meet a nice girl Yeah, Mackenzie High School people.
Coming down like an express train, you blast the jungle shaking. When he see the elephant coming down, pull down he start to shiver. The lions put him a couple bites. He said, man, back and pass together. And then the ones come, start to sing. Very loud in your ear, keep the ball down, hit the ball. And make him mourn. Ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen, child, I'll take it straight out the top if you want to get something to eat. On the right hand side, all the way to the entrance. Alright, you don't know, and come down like a horse. Jump up high and deliver. One come down like a thunderbolt. everybody just pull it up. In the meantime, while we celebrate the life of Mr. McDonald, hear me?
For Linden Mackenzie residents. I'm here with my younger sister, Denise, who's also an NHS student. I actually started Mackenzie High School in 1970, and my first encounter with Mr. McDonald when he came there was in 1972. I was there with him from 1972 until 1977 when I graduated. I was a family scholar. I left for his studies. After that, my experiences with Mac was pretty much on and off. I went to Mackenzie High School during my summer tours and also upon graduation. We could meet the chaplain and governments in the high school and some of the progress following. I immigrated to the United States back in 1983, and I was also doing a temporary job at St. Mark's Day School. And guess who I ran into there? That was Mr. McDonald. He was also a new immigrant that was also doing teaching at St. Mark's Day School. So we actually formed a special bonding at that school. He even attended my 25th birthday party. We held on Dr. Park here on Lennox Road. He was there. But actually, it was held at my sister's home, our apartment, just going to Lennox Road. So we were one of their high school guys who were there from the 70s, and we reflected a lot. I was also in class with his eldest child, who was Carol. That's my classmate. And but I just want to share my condolence to Carol, to the family, and to all the NHS alumni in the diaspora, particularly those who attended Mackenzie High School during the period when he was the principal. It was a very turbulent time when he initially got to Mackenzie High School, but eventually he settled in and was able to produce scholars like myself and others. So I don't know if Penny's like to add anything to that, but she witnessed everything that I just said, you know.
I'm sure Denise can speak a word or
I
two.
just want to share my condolences to Clifton Jr., Clifford, his mom, Carol, and the entire community. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the opportunity to say that.
These guys always donate. Denny's calling, bringing a pan of food. Ford, ABC the bar. Amazing. Thank you guys. Thank you. Copy family.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
I first of all express my heartfelt condolences to the McDonald family, the Mackenzie High School alumni, and the Linden community as a whole. I came into Mackenzie High School in 1973. It was a bit of a turbulent time. Some of the older folks have reflected this before. Mr. McDonald was just coming into the school. We had a situation there where we thought the acting principal at the time should elevate to the position of principal. We initially rejected, and I tell you what, that was the first probably incident in the history of Guyana where students took to the street. I kept coming as a junior at the time. I would have had experienced older folks. Mr. McDonald was new to us. It was nothing personal, but you know that's what happened at that time. But the older heads get to know it. And he would talk to you like a father. Mr. McDonald was just not a principal or a headmaster. That man put his soul into young folks like myself at the time. And the entire Mackenzie High School alumni owes him so much, and we're so grateful to have him in our lives. I personally can say a great thank you for having him in my life. He's responsible for the man, to a great extent to the man I've become in my life. I owe him a whole lot to my success. And I'm so grateful and thankful that we were blessed with his presence. Again, I would express my heartfelt condolences to the McDonald family, the Mackenzie High School alumni, and the Linden community as a whole, because the Mackenzie High School impacted the entire Linden community to such a great extent. You can go all parts of the globe and you will find MHS alumni wearing all forms of positions and at all kinds of activities. We've done great as a school and as a community in the Linden community. And I am so grateful that Mr. McDonald is part of my life and so many of my alumni. We are so grateful. Thank you, and may his soul rest in peace.
Yeah, you guys are gonna say. So again, for the deans, we support MHS, and thank you for being here tonight. Showing condolences to the family. It means a lot to all.
Every time I hear a newborn baby cry or touch a leaf or see the sky, then I know I believe.
My name is Helen Amsterdam. I was actually on earlier. Somehow I mistook the time and I was on just now on my phone. However, I just want to give my condolences to Mr. McDonald's family, his children, and it's so many years. I think it's 40 something years ago when I attended Christchurch School and he was my first principal. And I would want to say, in those times, we really had good times at school. Students respected teachers, teachers respected students. And because of him and the staff that he had, I am the person who I am today. So I'm so happy that I came up under Mr. McDonald's principalship. And I know he lived a good life. I saw him just a few years ago here in New York when our alumni, Christchurch alumni, we had, I think, an anniversary celebration, and then we met somewhere on on Nostrand Avenue. And I saw him then after so many years. I'm happy I did get to see him then. And, he's gone, but his memory lives on with us.
I was actually privileged to, I believe, my first year at Mackenzie High School when Mr. McDonald was there, but also privileged, as Nigel Goodluck said earlier, to be under the tutelage of his spouse at Mackenzie Primary School. So I want to thank each and every one of you who have joined us for tonight. The reflections were very great and represented what a great person, character Mr. Clifton McDonald was. And I must say that, for each and every one who spoke, we can tell you guys were impacted in some way or the other. And even if you weren't in your earlier days, it definitely showed up in your later years. And I think I must say that for myself, so I was one who maybe didn't probably take school that seriously. Of course, I'd never flunked out, but enough to not pay attention of all the teachers and so forth. But I can definitely say what I'm doing right now, it has impacted me and helped me to where I am. So totally appreciate all of you tonight who spent all the time on the call with us. To join and give your tributes and reflections. And I myself, on behalf of my sister and I, Carla London Greenwich, would like to extend my deepest condolences to the McDonald family.
And thank you all for putting this great program together. I really appreciate it. I attended Mackenzie High from 1978 to 1985. And what's ironic is the primary school I went to, which was Regma Primary, his wife, Shirley McDonald, was my principal. So I went straight from Mrs. McDonald's hands into Mr. McDonald's hands. And while I was there, Corol taught me integrated science at Mackenzie High. So I was always under the tutelage of the McDonalds. And that has helped to shape me as a person. And I, in turn, use what I have learned from growing up to shape my kids to be the people that they are today. And what I remember about Mr. McDonald is that he cared about us. I remember him. There are two things I specifically remember about him, and that is him standing in front of the office at midday time, looking at us, coming to the schoolyard, and ensuring that we were on time. And right now in my mind, I can just picture him. And I also remember him giving us a talk one time about not being shop soiled. That's the term he used. And it was a time when we're all young teenage girls, we're feeling ourselves, you know. And Linden is a community, or in Linden, you're raised as a community. So anything you do, it gets back to whoever, even before, you get there. So apparently word was getting back to him about the way his girls, his students were behaving. And he called us all together and he gave us a talk about how to, conduct ourselves, how we portray ourselves to the public. And he explained, try not to get shop soiled. The shop soiled is, or the analogy he used was, when you go into a store, you look at things, you touch them, and over time, because of people touching things, they become soiled. And he was trying to avoid us becoming shop soiled. And I appreciated that. But one thing I can say about Mr. McDonald was that he always cared. And you he cared because you felt it. He was always there guiding us, trying to ensure that we did our best. And that has helped to shape me to this day. So I just want to extend my condolences to the family. I know he will be sorely missed, but the work he has put in, the work that he put into us, even though he's gone now, will live on forever.
I met Mr. McDonald through my husband, Ruben Dash, who met him as a young teacher in Essequibo, and later privileged to work with him at Christ Church. So he was an acquaintance through my marriage. And I've always been impressed by his humility, his kindness. One of my most fond memories of him was that at the age of 90, he came from New York. No, it must have been 94, 5 years ago. At 94, he traveled from New York to Maryland to attend my daughter's wedding, and even came for the kwekwe the night before the wedding. And I was astonished that a man of his age would take the trip, and be a part of the festivities. But that's because of the association that we enjoyed with him over the years. And so we were very fortunate and blessed to be a part of his life. And I would also, on behalf of my family, my husband and I, and my children, would like to express our condolences to the McDonald's family.
I called out, or I named some phrases and some, thoughtful words that everyone said. And, when you kind of put it all together and summarize it, that is a good example of someone with great leadership. And so that's what our old principal or headmaster was, someone with great leadership skills and a style that was not able, I'm sure, no one is able to compare with or come close to. Because I've heard earlier also where we need more of Mr. Clifton McDonald's in society today. And, you know, I'm not sure if that will be possible, you know, to have someone like him. And so as we reflect on everything that he has done and for each and every one of us, whether it's as a principal, as a friend, as a father, as a grandfather, as a husband, we know that it's a time where it's worth the celebration of his life. You know, sometimes individuals pass on and we are worried whether or not, or not even whether or not, but we're just worried, period, you know, that they've lived a life that has not been reflective of what we so-called think that person should have done while on earth. And we can tell that he has done everything that he could have, that he was born to, that he was called to, because that is indeed a calling. You know, not everyone is called to be a leader, an effective leader. We can be leaders, but some of us are probably not that effective, but he truly, truly was an effective leader. And so we thank God for his, and whomever you believe in, for his life on earth and for everything that he has done.
Brother Kajil, I worked with Ms. McDonald. It would have been, I would say, 80, 88, 89, 90, 91, all those, you know, for about 10 years during that time at IS, well, it was called IS 210, but they changed it to IS 394. He was the ELA teacher, language arts, as you would say. Science teacher. And we worked in a group. We worked in, I forgot what they called it back in those days. We worked in a team with there were like 5 key teachers, and he was one of them. I was another, and the other teachers taught different other math teachers and other subjects. But Mr. McDonald was an excellent teacher. He was a disciplinarian, and I always appreciated his efforts when he worked with the young people. Initially that school, it was a difficult school to work with, in that the students came from backgrounds that were challenging, very, very challenging back in those days. And you know, it was not a walkover at all, but he was well prepared for the job, I got to tell you. Even the fact that because he had said that he did work previously in Guyana as a headmaster, head principal, but he wanted to get that additional, I guess, experience and maybe other things too, working in the system here in the United States. And we were very good friends because every Friday we would go we had different places we would go to, and we'd have a few drinks. After it was like 4 or 5 of us, fellow teachers, and he was among the group. And so I visited him a number of times throughout the years since he retired. And you know, it was unfortunate his illness that he had, because after a time he didn't know who I was. but I would still go and just say hello to him, and talk with his wife, and if there were any of his kids around, I would talk to them. But I really enjoyed his company, and he surely would be missed. He lived a very, very long life. I don't know of too many people that lived that. I mean, my father lived to 95, but there aren't that many people that live into the 90s that I know. So I really, I appreciate this effort that you all had in allowing us to reflect and give our input, and different interactions we had with Mr. McDonald. I want to just reach out and say condolences again to his wife, Shirley, and all the children, and all the grandchildren, the brothers, sisters. I'm not sure if he has brothers and sisters. I don't think I met them, but I just want to reach out to all of them and just, with some condolences. And yes, he will be missed. I know you're sad, but it's he lived a long life. That's the one thing I can say. He lived a long life, and he was. I'm sure that you all enjoyed his company while he was around.
Wrap up events over here in Brooklyn. It's a Sunday night. It's 9 p.m. and persons have to probably get to work early in the morning. And despite the inclement weather, we're grateful for the number of persons who have decided to show up. So I'm gonna have a quick over here who's gonna I guess give you a little bit of thanks and offer sentiments of himself and his entire family, and also just to let us know on the funeral arrangements that are for his dad.
Yeah. Again, everyone, thank you for coming. You listen to all and everyone that spoke tonight. And you kind of understand what an impactful life your dad and my dad have had on so many people. I have been privileged to call him dad, and I'm thankful that he spent 99 years with us, coaching us, mentoring us, making leaders out of so many of us. As I stand here tonight, I can tell you something. The MHS folks called me up, just listen, we got to do something. And we did something. Curtis, Travis, those guys, they're leaders, right? So many leaderships stay. All there on the phone, Leroy Nelson. They call Clifton, we got to do something. Christopher Howard, the Howard family, they just donated money like crazy. Like, Clifton, tell me what you need. I don't need anything, Chris. Just do what you got to do, Clifton. Let me know. Clark, they donated. Everyone else, family, the Coppin, everyone has been impacted. Casey, I keep calling this all night. They just call me up, they call, say, I want to do this, I want to do that. We have a kitchen full of food. I'm going to ask everyone to take 2 or 3 containers of food while you're going. And maybe you can have a good dinner tomorrow. Remember my dad. Let's do it now for more, and thank you all. Andrew James. I'm gonna sing Mr. Mosley. Okay. Those are people that really love my dad, the guys in Maryland, all this ball, my dad. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you for being there. I might have missed a bunch of Christchurch crew. There's so much Christchurch alumni, just having such a great time as your dad and trying to coordinate a funeral with somebody like your dad is really an exercise. So my sisters, I've been driving them crazy. My mom, I've been out not supporting her. But Mom, we love you, we got you. This is the son Yeah, that's what I got to do, and I can do it. So just let you know that I got your back, the family, we have your back. We want Daddy to remember us. He will remember us, regardless. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being online for the last 2 hours. Thanks, Dave. Dave, you've been the trooper. You were on vacation. You came back. You jumped right in. These are the people that make MHS and Linden great. Thank you, everyone.